Hey, Foilers. Ben and I need your help as we continue to work to grow it for God and increase the amount of listeners to the podcast. Here's what you can do to help. Head on over to our website, thetfhc.com, and be sure to sign up for the email newsletter. Doing so will make sure you get content as soon as it's available. Also, join us over at the Tinfoil Hat Club podcast page on Facebook, and be sure to follow, like, subscribe, and most importantly, share with everyone you think would enjoy the show on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Thanks for being fantastic and for all the love and support. Now, back to the show. Hello and welcome to the Tinfoil Hat Club. I'm Kyle.
And I'm Ben.
And welcome to episode number 3. So we talked about naming this one, the things we don't talk about in church part 2.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'll come up with some funky title for it. But we were going to talk about aliens this week, but we decided that maybe God was calling us in a different direction because we met up last night for a church event, and lo and behold, you and I were talking about the same thing.
Yes, the Elohim.
The Elohim. So it's...
I love how you put the...
You like my...
Yeah.
I got the phlegm roll.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to see how many times I can say Elohim in here. Dare I make a bad reference to a movie of how many times you can say something? I won't do that. But yeah, the Elohim are a fascinating... See, I did it again. They're a fascinating topic. So really what this is, if you're not familiar with, the Bible talks about other gods. Yes, there are other gods.
Yes.
Now, I'm not referring to Buddha or any other god you want to come up with. What other gods would there be? Who do the Hindus?
Krishna.
Krishna, thank you. That's not what we're referencing here. Not at all.
No.
So it's little g gods, and so don't freak out. There's only one big G god.
The OG.
The OG, all caps again. There's only one of those, but the Bible clearly does state that there are other small g, little g gods. And they are referenced and called, just as God is called, Elohim. Now, the interesting thing for that need to understand is how Elohim is used in Hebrew. And this is translational to English. You can figure it out this way. If I was to look at you and I was to say, the sheep is lost, you would know that that would be one sheep. But if I was to look at you and say, the sheep are lost, now you know I'm referencing the entire church.
Yes.
No. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not referencing any particular church that comes to mind. Well, it could be, but not our church or any other person's church or anything. But it's just using that as a reference to show that it's singular or it's plural. And you have to read the kind of the context around where it's being used to know if we're talking about OG God or these little g gods.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And we're going to look at some places in Scripture and maybe give you guys some food for thought, because like you said, this is never, I have never talked about this. In my 45 years of being in church.
Yeah.
That's like,
has your dad never gotten into it either?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Hot topic.
I could be wrong.
Yeah.
But I would never.
We can tease him. We can poke him in the ribs with it now. And be
Yeah.
like, yo.
Yeah.
You're getting up in years. What do you got to lose? Larry, if you're hearing this, here's your challenge. Talk about the little G gods. We'll help you. We'll set the stage for you here today, hopefully. But no, this is an interesting topic, and it does tie in very well timeline-wise to what we've come off of from really Genesis and then early parts of the Old Testament, for the most part. And one of the things that we definitely have some scripture that we wanted to read just to set the stage a little bit. But there's one specific scripture that we wanted to cover, which is Psalms 82.
Yes.
And it's pretty short, so I'm going to go ahead and read it now. Now, the interesting thing is at the top, and we can get into this here in a second too. This is a psalm of Asaph, A-S-A-F, or P-H. And it says, God presides in the great assembly. He renders judgment among the, quote, gods, little g. How long will you defend the unjust and show partiality to the wicked? Defend the weak and the fatherless, uphold the cause of the poor and the oppressed. Rescue the weak and the needy, deliver them from the hand of the wicked. The, quote again, gods know nothing. They understand nothing. They walk about in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are shaken. I said, you are gods, again quotes. You are all sons of the Most High. But you will die like mere mortals. Now that's a big one right there for me. You will fall like every other ruler. Rise up, O God, judge the earth, for all the nations are your inheritance.
Yes.
Now, the thing that I pick out of there that for me, like I said, was the key point, the home run hitter in there, because you could take everything before and say, oh, well, we're using this to say that the kings of the time, the rulers of the time, the human rulers of the time are unjust. But one of the things we throw in there that curveballs it pretty fast is, but you will all die like mere mortals.
Yes.
So clearly at this particular point, we ain't talking about mortals.
No.
Why would we say that if we were?
That's right. That's so true.
Yeah. So, and then the last line in there, rise up, O God, judge the earth, for all the nations are your inheritance. So that's an interesting line too, because it ties into why we're talking about this, I think, in the first place at all.
Yeah.
And so to set the stage a little bit, this takes us back to Genesis. We've come out of the flood. We've started to repopulate the earth. And as man always does, we started to screw it up.
Real quick.
Real fast.
And I think we discussed a little bit last week too.
Yeah, we did. We see, it's so sad to say, we see the same thing today when like the patriarch and the matriarch die. In this case, it would be the patriarch. Noah dies, and then, the kids start doing stupid crap.
Yeah.
We have Ham, that's, or Canaan rather, Ham's son, that starts taking territory that's not his. All the territory was split up evenly between the three boys, but then we start having this happen, and it's a mess.
Yeah, they're fighting over the will.
They're fighting over the candlesticks and the silverware.
That's right.
You've been given the whole earth, but that's not good enough either. You also have to take what belongs to your brother.
Oh man.
And the story continues on, right? Because that whole story of Canaan taking stuff that wasn't his follows all the way through the Old Testament, and really plays a kind of backdrop part in the New Testament with what we talked about in the first and second episode. Because if that whole event didn't happen, then we wouldn't have Mount Hermon potentially being the hotbed of, it would have been because that event happened before this, but that whole area up there around Mount Hermon and all that land up there became the naughty zone.
It did. Yeah.
The bad bone zone.
Yeah.
So do you know much about Asaph? I don't know what's really talked about him.
I don't know a whole lot about him.
I don't know if
I see his name a few times, and I'm like, he must have been some kind of. He could have been maybe he was a publisher, songwriter.
He could have been. Well, a lot of these guys were songwriters.
Maybe he was RCA in the day.
There you go. Right, Publishers Clearinghouse.
Yeah.
Somebody owes him $4,000 for all the back tablets. Columbia House reference there.
Yeah.
So. The other thing that most people don't realize that I find really fascinating is when you are talking about Psalms in general, I think a lot of people turn to Psalms for comfort reasons because they're more poetic and the words that are written in there are comforting, and that's great. Now, I'm not trying to say that's a bad thing at all, but one of the things that's often overlooked because of all those things is how prophetic they are.
Yeah.
There's a lot of prophecy that is talked about through the Psalms, like all of Christ's afflictions on the cross.
Psalm 22.
Yep. Are talked about in the Psalms. The other thing too is, and you and I talked about this before we hit record, right? Which is David. everybody knows King David. We kill the giant with the slingshot, and we have Bathsheba on the roof, and we have Solomon, and all these other maybe more famous points of David's life. But the thing we never talk about David was a prophet, because a lot of the Psalms were written by David, and I think that David often gets overlooked for being a prophet.
Yeah. This is so weird. You're discussing Psalms, and I got to tell this story.
Fire away.
A few years ago, I had this dream. This is going to get crazy. This is like...
Welcome to the Tinfoil Hat Club.
Hey, this is like this weekly story with Ben.
Weekly story with Ben. It's a segment.
Had this dream, and I was standing on the edge of a sword. And like my family was behind me, and there was this monster or something in front of me saying, worship me, bow down, or your family will die. And the only thing that I could think of in the dream was the 23rd Psalms. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want.
Yeah, famous.
And I never really thought about that until then. And it was almost like a war, like a declaration of war. And I thought about that, and I was like, yeah, that is like, when you go through it and you read it, yeah, you are getting ready for war.
Yeah.
And I started quoting that, and I woke up, but it was like probably crazy and then I was like, wait, that was insane to think about that. But later on, I was telling my wife, and she's like, kind of looked at it. She goes, yeah, I could see that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there you go. I mean,
that's basically Christ's same story in the wilderness, right? And it's basically join me, or okay, it's on. And he says, nope, it's on.
Yeah.
The whole temptation and everything. We see Christ being tempted, but really that's really what's going on there.
Yeah.
This is your last chance, kind of a thing. And if you don't join me, then you're going to die, and, I'm going to fight you, and so on and so forth. But another interesting thing too, tying into this same discussion is, when we are baptized, and we got into this last week too, talking about, the debate on what the proper way to baptize is or whatever, but that's not where I'm going with this. But when you're baptized and you are placed under the water and you're brought back up, I don't think a lot of times we really emphasize what that's what the representation of that is and what that really means. Yeah. And one of the things that Adrian and I have talked about is, that means you're agreeing to kind of representative of Christ going down to Sheol and rising from the dead.
Yeah.
And you're declaring war. Like you're kind of pledging allegiance to, Christ and God, and saying that I am going to accept this gift of salvation, and I'm on God's team. I'm on Christ's side.
Yeah, you. It's like you're going down in the great. You were, your sins made you die, but you're alive in Christ.
Yeah. Ain't no grave.
That's right.
That's a good song.
Yeah, it is.
So, this is an interesting discussion, because going back, what you have is man starts to corrupt things yet again after the flood. We start to have the giants at some point show up. You can see this, just the depravity is taking hold yet again. And then we have these things pop up like the Tower of Babel.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Shocking. Babylon. Right, and we have Nimrod, which we've discussed. Nimrod was I don't know how you could read it and see anything other than he was the ruler of Babylon.
Yeah.
Do you read anything differently?
No, he was a great king, a mighty hunter.
Mm-hmm.
Men of renown.
Yes, heroes of old, men of renown. So the same kind of wording that was used in Genesis 6:4 shows up when discussing him, which makes me think that he was probably of Nephilim descent in some form.
I can't remember. Just speaking of Nimrod, supposedly in I don't know if it's in Jubilees or Jasher. he had the clothes of Adam and Eve, supposedly.
Has to be in Jasher. And again, we talked about Jasher a little bit, but I've never read the book of Jasher. That's the one where, from what it seems like for me, it's the real book maybe has been lost over time, and that one was the one that I think we talked about, the friar found or whatever he was.
But it's interesting that, I mean, they technically weren't that far removed, but...
Yeah, because you're only, it's only a few thousand years, Ben.
Yeah. But when people live to be almost 1,000.
They do. Well, yeah, he lived a few years short of 1,000 because of the sin of the garden. That's another interesting thing, too. The way that I read all of this is I don't think man was designed to live forever.
Yeah.
I think we were still mortal. Like, I think we had a lifetime. I think we were supposed to live 1,000 years.
Yeah.
And then we were going to be done. If you read the same similar?
I never really thought about it. I mean, like that, but I'm like, well, but if 1,000 years is a day, then a day is 1,000. You know?
Yeah, it talks about the way that it's some of the things worded is, and it ties into Genesis. But I want to say maybe it was Jubilees where it talks about Adam dying short of his lifespan because of the sin in the garden. He didn't fulfill his 1,000 years. Which is an interesting thing because, it's hard to break out of our modern
80 years.
Yeah, well, that too, and like the sin nature, right? It's hard to think about what we would have been like before sin entered the picture, more like our mortality. So like now we know because sin's in the picture, well, when you die, you go one of two places.
Yeah.
And that too is of controversy. Not really. It's not I don't think controversial. I think the controversy in that particular statement lies in the ignorance not of people but of what's been taught by the teachers to people.
Yeah.
I think I made a statement before, but like I've spent a ton of my last few years as I've grown wiping away a lot of the bad dogma I was taught as a kid.
Yeah, if we want to know about death, just read what Jesus said about it.
Indeed.
And he cut and dry real quick, real easy.
That's the thing, so, all right, let's go here, Ben. So, when you die, and I want to hear if you have the same take as me. I mean, we've kind of talked about it, so I think you do, but if you don't, I'm all ears. When you die, the common thinking is you're taught you either go to heaven or hell.
Yeah.
Right, as the common teaching. I do not believe that to be the case. So controversy point number 2 of the day. It does not read that way to me. And even using just the Bible, it does not read that way to me. And the reason I say that, you can find this in just exactly what you just said, which is the parable of rich man and Lazarus.
Yep.
Now, granted, when Christ is giving the parable of the rich man and Lazarus during the teach, he is still alive.
Yeah.
So, for us, he's not here anymore. So it is a game changer because of what happened through that process. But prior to Christ, there's kind of 2 parts of the story. Prior to Christ, you would all go when you died to Sheol.
Yeah.
Or you would also known as Hades. And you would be separated in this realm into one of 2 compartments, which would be paradise or torment. And in the parable of the rich man and Lazarus, you can see very clearly that Christ makes no bones about the fact that when the rich man dies, Lazarus was the beggar. The rich man goes to the torment side, and he's begging for a drink of water or somebody to cool his tongue, I think, or something along those lines. And the beggar is with Abraham on the paradise side, also known as Abraham's bosom.
Yep.
Is what it's also referred to. And we can see this again during the crucifixion, because we've got the 2 thieves, and the one thief is defending Christ and saying he doesn't belong to be up here. We do. Leave him alone. And the other thief is basically like, jeering at him and, mocking him and everything else. And the thief who's defending Christ actually says, please don't forget me when you enter into your kingdom. And he says, you will be with me today in
paradise.
Paradise.
He didn't get baptized?
He did not.
He didn't become a member of the church?
He did not, Ben.
Oh, wait a minute. What's up with that?
Ooh, controversy point number 3. I believe it says we are sanctified by the blood, not water. Right? Yes.
I couldn't help it.
Yeah. No, it's valid though, right? Because we need to be real about what Scripture says, not about what 21st century Western theology and church says.
Was he doing communion? Did he do communion?
I don't think he probably partook. He probably partook in communion without knowing it was communion in excess, I would think. There may have been bread and vibe, but I guarantee you quite a bit of wine. So you can clearly see pre-Christ in that story, in that parable, they go to one of these two places. They do not go to hell. This is not hell. Hell is a separate place.
Yeah.
Now we go post-Christ. Where did Christ go when he died, and where did he go? He descended into Sheol.
And released the captives.
Set the captives free. We talk about this every Easter, but then we don't typically get into what the heck that means, right? He sets the captives free. Well, that's because they hadn't been in heaven at that point. They're in paradise, which is a nice place, but it don't compare to heaven. So at that particular point, everyone who is in paradise was ushered to heaven.
Yep.
That's why you have, and you said Luke, I do believe, I always get my Gospels mixed up, but
Luke or Matthew, I'm not.
One of the two. You have the resurrected bodies walking around for a time in Jerusalem. These spirits, right? Because those folks had been resurrected. Because they were dead. They were in Sheol. There's a lot of verses that talk about this too. Soon the dead will hear my voice and live.
Every time I've read that, I always thought, what's Grandpa doing here? That just, as it's crazy to think.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody really, if that happened today, it'd be all over the place.
Yeah. Who knows what we'd take that and twist it into? Who knows what CNN and Fox would do with that?
I know.
Tune into the Epic Times. They're more neutral. All right, I digress. But you have Christ do this, right? And then we eventually come back. Now, I don't think that's the only stop Christ made when he was partying for 3 days in the tomb in the afterworld, or the underworld. So you have all of those. Now, those that are in torment. So those folks get resurrected on the paradise side.
Yeah.
Those folks get resurrected, right? I believe that they are the only people in heaven right now with resurrected bodies.
Yeah, makes sense.
I mean, it seems to make sense. Why would they be taken from their graves? I think that they have resurrected bodies. I think that was kind of the.
So the question is that the first resurrection?
I would say so.
Wait, then that takes a lot of people's.
Uh-oh.
That's going to blow some theology.
Yep. Kaboom.
Wait,
That's the way I read it.
Wait, no, it can't be. No.
Yep. I think that was the prize for them living a good life without having Christ to turn to.
Well, they were saved on the layaway plan.
Yeah, right.
They were. I mean,
That's kind of the gist of it.
Yeah, they did the sacrifices, and if they were righteous and follow God's commands.
Yeah, I think it's very, very subjective. Now we have the downside for us. No, there's not a downside, but what we don't receive the resurrected body until the final judgment, Christ's second coming. That's the way I've always read it. Like that, we're not going to get that. It's not going to happen for us until that.
See, always, absent from the body, present with the Lord.
Yeah. I mean, resurrected body, who cares? I want to be with God. I'll be with Jesus.
I think, in my mind, I think once we die, we are.
Yeah, because now that's an important point to distinguish too that we haven't really got to yet, is when you die and you go to Sheol, you don't go to Sheol now unless you're going to the torment side.
Yeah.
You're not going to hell. Hell is reserved for final judgment.
Yeah.
So from my vantage point, and again, you correct me if you see it differently. From my vantage point, the way I read, there are that many inhabitants, zero inhabitants right now in what we would know as hell.
Yeah, because nobody's there yet.
Nobody's there yet because we haven't had final judgment.
No.
So when we die now, if you're a Christ follower, you go straight to heaven. You don't go to Sheol. You don't go to paradise. You go straight to heaven because you have been judged under Christ on the earth while you were here. And when you died, you were judged on whether or not you accepted the gift of salvation.
Yeah.
And you either go to hell's waiting room, i.e. torment in Sheol, or you go to heaven.
It's a doctor's office waiting to be seen by the doctor.
I think of it like the scene in Beetlejuice.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to be the head shrinker guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though I already look like the head shrinker guy. Big body, little head.
I always, I wonder what the resurrection bodies will look like. Boy, we got way off topic, but anyway.
Well, we'll bring it back.
I know.
Because it all ties together.
I know it does. This is...
I say it a million times, but it's true.
The resurrected body, what I think is it's like the body Jesus had. Similar. It was flesh and blood and he could eat and drink, but you could walk through walls.
Yeah, he had scars and stuff still.
Yeah.
But I think that's not the way it's going to be for us.
I think he has to.
Yeah.
Because he was the lamb.
Yeah.
That was slain. I think he will have those for eternity.
He did it just for Thomas.
Yeah.
You think so? You think Jesus will have the scars?
For eternity, yeah. So we remember what he did for us.
I think that's pretty cool. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have that. And then now, this... Go ahead.
Because he is the perfect defense attorney.
Amen.
When Satan's up there accusing, because that's what he does day and night. All Jesus has to do is walk up and show his hands.
Yeah.
And God's like, okay, you're set free.
You lose. You're a loser.
That's right.
Which we come full circle back to what we did start talking about before we went into the Tinfoil Hat Club tangentville. Yeah. That's good stuff, though.
Yeah, it is.
Because we come back to, I believe, another attempt to destroy God's creation, which is the little g gods.
Yeah.
Right? So we come out of Genesis, come out of the flood. We have the Babylon event happen where we have the tower. And it seems like the whole goal there was we want to overtake God.
Yep.
And we want to be greater than God. Now, there's a lot of stuff. That, too, is very Cliff Notes version in Genesis. So there's probably a lot more to that story that is written down somewhere that we probably don't even have anymore. But we eventually come to that whole event coming down. Man gets scattered. And it's like God is fed up. And he's like, you know what? You want to worship everybody but me? Fine. I'm going to give you gods. Yeah. You want gods? You want other gods to worship? I'll give you other gods. And then you made the comment earlier about, the deal was, but I'm going to take one.
Yeah. God said, I'll give you the 70 or 72, whatever it was, but I'll take one. I'll take one tribe. I'll take the Abraham, Isaac, Jacob tribe. I'll take them.
Yeah.
It takes the Hebrews. Well, they're not Hebrews then. Well, no, they would be. They wouldn't be Hebrews.
They really wouldn't be anything, really.
Yeah, it would just be
Adamites,
yes.
Noahites.
Yes.
Well, that wouldn't be right either. There's no Hebrew or Jewish as we would know it today.
Yeah,
which is kind of hard to get your head around.
Yeah, he took Abraham.
Yeah,
because of what Abraham was doing. Which was interesting if you've looked into the history of Abraham, and his dad was an idol maker for Nimrod. And
where'd you get that from?
I can't remember.
There's so many books.
I honestly can't remember. And so what happened was I'll say legend. How's that?
Yeah, there you go.
The legend.
Allegedly. MUFON files indicate.
Which his mom told him to go feed the gods. Now they were stone. Now, funny thing, I listened to a thing on Michael Heiser this week talking about the Elohim.
Yeah.
And this ties into that because they were, even though they were stone or wood, they were real.
Yeah.
Because they needed a place to inhabit.
Mm-hmm.
So the gods were hungry, we'll say. Abraham went to feed them, but he destroyed all the idols. Nimrod got mad. He heard about it. So Abraham fled. And that's when God thought, I could use this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Because what Michael Heiser was saying was they would make something, they'd carve something out of stone or wood, and then they would do a process to open the mouth. They would do some kind of enchantment, dance,
I've heard this
spell, so the Elohim would inhabit that and the mouth would open. So if the mouth is open, that means there's life.
Yeah, and they could feed them.
And they could feed them. And
I keep getting Napoleon Dynamite in my head. Eat your dinner, Tina. Fat lard.
And that's why when they would go in and destroy, that means they had to go through the whole ritual again.
Mm-hmm.
And think about with the Ark of the Covenant in the Temple of Dagon. The Ark, it wasn't, that's where God inhabited. And they carried it. It wasn't an idol. It wasn't a face. And they set it in there, and the Dagon fell over and crushed its mouth.
Mm. Yeah. It's an interesting part of history that we don't talk about.
No.
And it's important because of kind of the path.
Yeah.
Because really it's down through that pathway and the continuous turning away from God and turning away from God and turning away from God. Because then as we roll forward in time, we have Abraham's line all go develop to what we would know now as the Israelites.
Yeah.
Right? The chosen people, his chosen people, right? And everyone else would be known as the Gentiles.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we go through the whole subjugation.
Well, they would have been heathens.
Yeah, true.
Heathens.
The side of the church I sit on, the heathen side.
Barbarians.
Right. And then so for the Jewish and in the Hebrews, you go through the subjugation in Egypt. They get out of Egypt. God finally sets them free. They come out of that or helps free them, right? And then they wander around the desert because of their disobedience for 40 years.
Yep.
And the continued disobedience. So then the next punishment that God rolls out is, I'm going to no longer have favor towards you. I'm going to turn my favor towards the heathens.
Mm-hmm.
Since you won't accept me and all the quote-unquote Gentiles.
Yeah.
Would Gentiles be the way I've always written, anyone who's not a...
I've done some digging.
Yeah, so you're wiser than I am here, so share away.
Gentiles are anyone that's out of fellowship with God.
Oh.
It would have been the out of fellowship other tribes, like the 10 other tribes of Israel.
Mm.
That's why when Jesus said, I'll be dead for 3 days, and they're like, where's he going to go? To the dispersed? And they were talking about the dispersed tribes that had been assimilated around the other nations, and they called them the Gentile nations because they didn't consider them in fellowship with God.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, people are like, what is he talking about? That's a whole thing I've been studying. I've been studying it for a couple years now, and I'm not quite ready to go full bore on it, but it's like I'm pretty close to planting my flag there on that.
The interesting thing about the Old Testament, and I kind of want to take the time to reread the Old Testament, especially now that I have the Enoch and Jubilees lenses that I can see through. It'll have so much more meaning to me now, and it'll make a lot more sense.
Yeah.
And because when you read it, when you're a younger Christian or you don't have that, it probably, the first thing that you struggle with is reference. Like, is it, or relevance, I should say, from a relevant standpoint. Because we look at the New Testament and we're like, okay, we tend to think, okay, this is what's relevant because you got Christ and everything, Christ does a lot of the stuff. But I'm finding more and more that a lot of those Old Testament events and stories are more meaningful now today than maybe they have been ever before.
Yeah.
Because of where we are from a societal standpoint.
Yeah.
I mean, we're bad. really bad in the way that we're turning away from God. Now, there's a lot of stuff in the New Testament that's extremely relevant too, i.e. every letter that Paul ever wrote to any church. It's like you could combo pack those together, and that's our current society in a lot of ways. But here you have these gods that are appointed over the nations, and while God sent them to us to oversee us, they were not just.
No, they're still not just.
Yeah, correct. Now the question is, when do you see in the story that the power was taken back from them, from God?
Well, Paul wrote that all government was set up by God. So that means they're still, as much as I want to say, they're probably still in charge, because I tried to find it. I just couldn't find it. In Enoch, it says the 70 or 72.
You said near the end, right?
That near the end will be cast into the lake of fire.
Yeah, because the punishment and that makes sense because what we just read, but you will die like mere mortals. And we know that now that's where hell comes into the mix. See, all ties together.
Yes.
The inhabitants of what we know as the traditional descriptor of hell will be a busy place.
Yes.
Unfortunately.
Yes.
And that's where those guys are going to get tossed. Those that are in torment in hell's waiting room are going to get tossed at the final judgment. And it kind of read to me in Enoch that there was a separate, special place for the watchers.
Yeah.
But you could also read it that they're going to get tossed in there too.
Yeah. And then Satan, the devil, Lucifer, whatever you want to call him.
Yeah. Yeah, because where's it at where it talks about when that event happens, how he's going to be mocked. It's kind of like, here you were the master deceiver, the master of all this plan, and here we're all sitting with you together, and how low you've been.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, verses mixed together for me. I think it might have been one of the ones that you and I were talking about, where it's either Isaiah or Ezekiel. Yeah, one of the two. And again, I want to go reread my Old Testament. Make a lot more sense now, because that's really another interesting thing too. There's not a ton of stuff in the Bible about the devil.
No,
what we would refer to as the devil, Satan. Satan is also a very relative term.
Yeah, it's like a
accuser
or
bad guy,
or Michael Eisner said, it's gone.
It's all right.
It's gone.
Everybody's going to get the gist of what we're talking about. It's a general term. Now, the vast majority of the New Testament, when we say, and still today, when we say the devil, we're talking about one specific entity.
Yeah.
In the Old Testament, a lot of times when devil is used, it's not used in that manner. It's used for general bad guy accusers, because there are other entities that are bad.
Yeah.
Now, as a side note and a plug, and we're not getting anything for this, by the way, but if the Michael Heiser family wants to help us out, I won't turn them away. I would highly, highly, highly encourage everyone listening to this to go buy the book, The Unseen Realm, by the late, great Dr. Michael Heiser, who was phenomenal. Did phenomenal research on a lot of different stuff, but specifically specialized in the spiritual realm side of the coin.
Yeah.
The Unseen Realm, Dr. Michael Heiser. Check it out. I would highly encourage you. There's also that one's kind of a doctorate level kind of stuff, but it's still good. It's got a ton of great reference material. There's a great appendix in the back where it'll actually break it down by topic and actually in the Bible, like the books. But there's also a book called Supernatural, which is kind of the lighter version. Yeah. So I'm actually going to be teaching a class that you know about. It's going to start this Friday coming up, and kids are going to be getting the Unseen Realm. We're going to be using that as a reference material in class.
That's good.
it'll be good for them. I'm excited to take them on this trip because this topic today is actually going to be, and we didn't do it because of this. It's just kind of, fitting because God knows what you need before you do. Maybe this is my sharpening of the pencil before I get to the week number 2 with these kids, which is we're going to get into where you are in creation. Where do you rank? Which is exactly where we're going next, Ben.
Really?
Imagine that. So this is something else that I am really keying in on, and I've started to study a lot, and it's a huge passion point for me. And it's a very important thing because it ties into the spiritual warfare intimately. And it's this: we as human beings, as people, do not understand who we are.
No.
In rank in the family of God.
No.
Because Satan, the devil, the one singular entity that we refer to most often, has done a masterful job of convincing us that we are less than who we really are, because that is the only way that he can derive power, is if we give it to him.
Yeah.
He doesn't get it any other way. He only gets it when we give it to him. And there's some interesting stuff out there as to why Satan lost his place in heaven. And was it you that, I think you and I were talking about how he was mad, that you read somewhere that maybe he was mad because he had to be like
he was the
the guy that would usher in the king.
Yeah, I was told by my mother.
Oh, there it is.
That he was created.
Mom, you're on the hook now.
That he was created to announce Christ's entrance because he was made the most beautiful. He had every stone adorned to him.
Yeah, there's a lot of that talks about his beauty.
And so he had, what better thing than this beautiful thing? And think about it. Sin is very beautiful.
Interesting statement.
Sin is beautiful. Think about it. When it comes right down to it, yeah, that I want that.
Oh, it's attraction, you mean?
Yes, the attraction to it. Because same with the fruit.
Yep.
If it looks good, it's got to taste good. It's got to feel good. It's got to do something good for my body.
Those women were pretty hot. The Watchers wouldn't have done what they did.
That's right.
Yeah.
So he is created to have all this beauty.
Yeah.
To announce the Son. Now, and he felt like he was the cat's meow with looking as good as he did, and he didn't think he should announce the Son. He should be announced.
Yeah. It definitely talks a lot about, it even refers to him as a guardian cherub.
Yeah.
The interesting thing that you don't get is where he kind of ranked in God's hierarchy of family. So that's a pause point there, because I just said something we need to dive into, which is just that God's hierarchy of his family. So we don't talk about that at church at all either.
No.
We don't talk about where all of these entities in the spiritual realm rate and rank and where we fit in there.
Yeah.
Obviously, the top 3, undoubted, unquestioned, would be God, Christ, Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Nobody ranks higher than those 3. Okay. But then after that is where it gets interesting.
Yeah.
Because the way that I read it, I believe that next in the pecking order would either be us or the Elohim. But I think it's us.
Yeah.
And the reason I think it's us is just the way things are worded. And I think while it seemed like the Elohim were sent down to rule over us, yes, I think that's true. But I also think it was a similar situation that we had with the Watchers.
Were they to rule or guide?
And that's just the thing too. That's why I said what I did, because if you look at the Watchers, I think the Watchers were sent down here not to rule over us, but to be more guides for us. And really, I think that's what the other gods were. It was like, okay, God's like, I'm going to give you some other gods. Hey, boys, come over here. You're in the game. And if you were just and you were righteous, it's not an environment where you're really ruling over someone.
Yeah.
It's you're guiding them.
Yeah.
You have authority, but it's not necessarily, it's kind of like your boss gets hired and you help train them.
Yeah.
That's a really crude analogy, but it's kind of true, right? They still, quote unquote, outrank you, but you're having to help train them.
Yeah.
Because they're ignorant.
Yes.
And it's similar. So I think after us, we are it. Compared to those three, God, Christ, Holy Spirit, we're next. And we don't think that way.
No, we don't.
We think we are so far, we outrank angels, seraphim, cherubim, anything you want to pick, Satan, the other little g gods, angels, any other entity. We are higher in importance and where God views us in his family.
Yeah. We were made in his image.
We were made in his image.
We're the only thing that he created that's made in his image.
Yeah.
And it says, and another thing from Michael Heiser, he kind of jokingly said the reason why Lucifer was mad, we were created.
Yeah.
Is because they were called sons of God, mm-hmm. but Adam was the first son. Mm-hmm. It's like a tongue-in-cheek thing,
Yeah.
But I don't think Adam even looked at it like that. Mm-hmm. When we read in the first part of Genesis, like that short little relationship they had, it was very personal. I mean, our goal is to get back to walk with God.
Yeah.
And even though we can't see him physically, mm-hmm. we need to build on that relationship daily. I mean, that's the key. I mean, I get in a preacher mode. How often do we need to lean on God daily? If we don't
hit it daily.
If we don't, we're going to fall flat on our face.
Yeah. If I've learned anything over these last few years, how much more enriched my life is because of my relationship with God.
Yeah.
How much it's grown. And the key to it all, I think, is obedience.
Yeah.
And when you are obedient and you have a heart for obedience, God reveals himself more and more and more to you. And every single human being on this earth. So if you're listening to the sound of my voice and you're not even a Christian, you're not even sure if you want the gift of salvation, we obviously hope that you make that choice, but I want you to listen to this too. You have gifts from God, and they're talked about in the Bible.
Yeah.
And what happens is when you walk in faith and you walk in obedience, God takes those gifts and amplifies them and magnifies them. It's like I used the analogy, I think, earlier and yesterday too, of sharpening the pencil. Your attunement goes up. You hear God's voice more clearly, more often, because you're constantly seeking him. Because it's kind of like almost like a horrible analogy again, but it's like a drug.
Yeah.
But it's a good drug because you're like, I want more of that.
Huey Lewis, I want a new drug.
I want a new drug, baby. And the way he describes it is all the things God gives. It's like,
I know.
He wants the drugs, but he doesn't want all the bad stuff that comes with drugs.
I know.
That's the way God is, right? So it's all the good and none of the bad. And now that we've equated God to drugs. But yeah, y'all get what we mean. It's the best drug you're ever going to have. It's never going to let you down. It ain't going to make you feel bad. All the things Huey says. And it's really powerful and really potent. And and you can see God. And you can feel God's presence, and you can see him talk to you. And it's an amazing experience. So, and I think people, even when they're not walking with God, still there's something inside each of us where we know, because of that tether of who we are in creation, that it's just constantly like a finger just flicking away at the paint.
We all have a God-shaped hole in the middle of us.
Amen, brother.
And people fill it with the wrong things.
They do
all the time.
And it's just, you don't have enough stuff to throw in the hole.
Yeah.
You won't have enough drugs. You won't have enough sex. You won't have enough sin. You won't have enough possessions. You won't have it. Take your pick. Fill in the blank. It doesn't matter. You will never have enough of that stuff to throw in the hole to have the fulfillment.
Yeah.
If like money, I think the single biggest thing that all of us chase, human beings naturally, is money. If money was the secret to happiness, we would have a whole lot more alive, rich people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
There's a really good book from several years ago now, probably been 20, 30 years ago now, but called The Man in the Mirror by Patrick Morley. And he has a section in the book that kind of talks about that. And what is really cool in that second, well, it's not cool, it's horrible, but talking about kind of like the railroad boom age, kind of like around the Titanic time, you got the railroads booming, the banking is booming, industrial kind of.
The golden age.
Yeah, the golden age. Talking and walking through all of these famous guys who were the heads of these companies or banks or whatever, and how many of them died either penniless and alone or committed suicide.
Yeah.
And it's because of what I just said. If that stuff could fill the hole, the way you just said, if it could fill the hole, they would be alive.
Yeah. Going back to your talents, or everybody has something. Yeah. A talent of silver or gold weighed 78 pounds. Now, think of that as I think of that in the terms of a person. Okay, so 2-3 talents would equal a person. So I think everybody has
more.
Yeah, has at least 2 or 3 talents that they can work and use for God.
Yeah.
I've always believed that, because what a coincidence. That's called talents, and we're supposed to give our talents to God.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, and I'm not trying to make this a Bible thump session of what you should and shouldn't do, but again, we're also here to tell the truth. And one of the other things that I find with inside of that too is I'm a very analytical person. Okay, I have spreadsheets for everything. I have a spreadsheet for this podcast that says when we're going to do what show, when I'm going to edit it, when I'm going to upload it. I have all this stuff, right? So I have a budgetary spreadsheet for our house, and because I kind of run the financial side of the house from that perspective, because it's my strength. And one of the things that I cannot explain to anybody, because on paper it looks like a whole bunch of money is going out, and that's tithing, giving 10% of our income whenever we get it to the church. Now, God doesn't need your money. And that's not what it's about. It's an obedience thing.
Yeah, obedience and a growth process.
It is. But the key to it all is obedience. And I'm going to tell you this. Without exception, whenever I have decided in my life, and it's been several years because the lesson was taught to me very clearly through what would happen when I did not tithe. Because on paper, it looks like we should have a lot more money, right? When I did not tithe, I always had less money than when I would. Now, that makes no sense whatsoever. It would always find its way out somehow, and then some. When I would tithe something, I was always taken care of. And I'm not advocating that you tithe because it's not the lottery. God ain't going to turn around and give you $1 million because you're tithing. It has to be a heart thing. But the crazy thing with that is when I would do that, how God would honor that. And I would always have more. I call it God math.
Yeah.
It's just, I can't explain it. But it's an obedience thing. And what we find in the story, because it all ties together, I know we took the tangent earlier, but it's not really a tangent.
No.
Because it all comes back to the same thing. Even these gods who were sent down, just like the Watchers, to help oversee us, were disobedient. And that's exactly what this passage is talking about.
Yes.
We had kind of pulled some other ones too, down in Deuteronomy, which I want to go back. If I pick a book to start with, I'm going to start with Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy is loaded with stuff that is relevant for today.
Yeah.
And in Deuteronomy 6:4, we see, do not follow other gods, the gods of the peoples around you. He's telling them, he's like, don't do this. You know, I've already, it's been bad. Don't do it anymore. Because by this point,
they've already lived with God for 40 years. He's taken care of them.
Yes.
Their shoes never wore out.
Yeah.
Talking about tithe. There you go.
There you go.
Their oil. I'm sure your oil doesn't run out. And I'm not talking about like heating oil. I'm talking about food oil that never, like the story of Elijah, the woman's oil never ran out.
Yeah.
They were with God. God provided everything for them.
Yeah, now we're talking about specifically the Israelites at this point.
Yes, getting ready to go into the land, and he's warning them, don't, or something, bad's going to happen. I'm going to leave you guys alone.
Just like I did before.
Yeah, that's right.
And even when I kind of feel bad for the Israelites in some ways, because like we read it now, and of course we're getting condensed a couple pages, and we skip, a lot of time and all this. But man, when you go back and read it, you're like, these people were just
I know,
hard-headedest people in the world.
But that's us.
It totally is. Only every day.
That's right.
Only every day. But it's crazy to me, like we talked about the giant thing. And, here they literally had just escaped from Egypt. They watched God literally part the Red Sea, swallow the entire Egyptian army, and then they turn around and go, we can't go fight giants. What are you talking about?
I know.
And it's like,
the sad
are
thing.
you kidding me? But we do the same thing.
Yeah.
Like we say, what's the giant in your life?
Oh, I could
That's
name
probably where that comes from, right? Like,
oh yeah, I could name off a ton of giants in my life.
Amen. So could I.
But the thing of it is, we're living on this side of history. We can sit and we can armchair quarterback the Bible all day long, but we do it we doubt and sin. I shouldn't say sin daily, but we
try not to.
Yeah, we try not to, but we throw them so much shade.
Yeah, we do.
And we're no better.
If we're like, captains of kickball, it'd be like Israel would be picked last.
Yeah.
Like, no way, dude.
Yeah.
No way. You'll shank it in the first shot you get.
I know, but we need to have compassion when we look at these people in the Bible, because I'm no better than they are.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, and we live such a condensed, like that's the other thing too, is like people tend to think, they read a lot of the stories like we talked about, especially with the giants, and it's kill everything that walks and breathes, including the women and the children and the animals. And it's like, how you said, how could God do that? And you have to understand the backstory to all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so, but one of the things too is, when you look at the Old Testament, you're looking at thousands of years of history, right? And then when you look at the New Testament, you're literally looking at like 100.
Yeah.
Not even.
I know. It's like blip.
Yeah, it's a snippet.
Yeah, it's crazy, the difference.
And so you get the Old Testament is the God of wrath, and the New Testament is the God of love, and all this stuff. And like, no, God never changes.
Yeah.
He never changes.
Yeah. The crazy thing is, Jesus says, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. Yep. And think about that. The same guy that killed the women, kill the children. He's loving the sinners. He's loving the sick. He's loving the ones that are lost.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? Because he came with compassion. He came to bring them back to him.
Yep. So that's the other thing too, is all of the discussions we're having all point back to Christ,
Yeah.
and that whole spiritual warfare side, right? Here you've had thousands of years by the time Christ is crucified, and Satan's behind all of it, right? The whole message and the whole mission is to destroy us.
Yep.
I'm like, that's it, is to get us off track. It's to destroy us at any turn we can get. And no matter what people get involved in, and no matter how successful they are and how much they sell their souls to be a part of something. And you and I were talking about that last night, where it's like the music, especially and Hollywood and all these people, like, having to sell their soul to be famous, and the depravity of stuff. And you're just a pawn, man.
Yeah.
You might taste success for a while. He'll let you do that. He'll let you have just enough success to hang yourself, just enough rope to hang yourself, right? Because that's another thing too. If fame equaled happiness, we'd have a lot more of those people alive too.
Oh yeah.
Like we joke about the 27 Club, where you have the Janis Joplins and the Jim Morrisons and the Jimi Hendrix, and then we went through.
That's
the 90s.
Morgan Freeman now.
Oh, is he playing Jimi Hendrix now?
No, that's who.
Is that who? Oh,
yeah.
Jimi Hendrix turned into Morgan Freeman?
Yeah.
I was like, how are they going to have Morgan Freeman play Jimi Hendrix? He's like 90.
And Chevy Chase became Jim Morrison. There
is that? Yeah. I heard that too. Someone else.
Tinfoil Hat Club right there,
Tinfoil Hat
folks.
Club, baby. Yeah, we've just touched this is all the spirituals, the stuff. We just touched the surface of some of this stuff that we're going to talk about as episodes go on.
Yeah.
Because we've already mentioned the astral world thing, and I think we're starting to see that again too. The other thing that maybe you and I need to discuss getting into from a crazy standpoint is the Hawaii deal with the fire. Right. I don't know. I haven't looked into it enough to say, but
yeah,
you hear a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
You hear a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
What you do know is this: there is evil afoot. Evil is alive. I keep saying this: evil is alive and well.
It has been from day one.
It has been from day one, and it's even more so now, because right now is like the devil's heyday.
Yeah.
And it's curious too, and this is maybe obviously another discussion, because we could get into this. Is leading down kind of we kind of flip it over now. We talked a little bit about Revelation time, because it's so funny to me how people will say second coming, and then they start talking about what they would reference being the rapture, and I'm like, no, those are two different events. Like, I'm not a rapture guy, but
no,
second coming is the end.
Yeah.
Like epilogue, whatever the last thing in the book is. It's what you go read, and when you first get the book, you flip to the last page.
What? Oh no.
Yeah. The good news is you're going to get a cool resurrected body too. Now, we don't get resurrected bodies. And I think we talked about this earlier, but when we die, we don't get resurrected bodies. That's going to happen at the end.
Yeah.
And
yeah, because everybody thinks they're going to come back to war with Jesus. That's one of the things.
Yeah, I don't know where they get that.
I don't either. It says what is it? The
be
host,
caught up in the sky. Everybody's gonna be caught up in the sky.
The host or the army of heaven. No, we're not in the army.
No, that's the angels.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
That's Michael.
A lot of people think that we're just like, we're his bride. Why would the bride go back to war?
Yeah.
We've done our fighting here.
Yeah, and what a fight it's been.
Yes, we're still fighting.
Yep, every day.
It's a spiritual war, because we 100%. Are fighting against principalities and powers of darkness that we can't see, that are in charge of us and have dropped the ball, and they become evil.
Yeah.
And they let evil people do evil things.
Yeah, that's something else that I've talked about with my Friday group. That's an interesting talk too, because we're in a very odd place right now from a Christian perspective, because the way that I read a lot of the stuff, especially in the New Testament, is we are not here to stone people anymore. We're not here to uphold the law. That's not our job.
No.
Our job is to keep each other clean from a Christianity perspective, hold each other accountable, and then get the lost. That's what our job is.
Yeah.
But the problem that we have is the law is supposed to be upheld by a just government. And heaven knows we don't have a just government.
Yeah.
Because they do not uphold God's law.
Yeah.
They don't cherish God's law. I don't know that there's ever been a more corrupt political society. Well, I don't know. There's a lot of societies vying for that title in history. But yeah, we don't serve a just government.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to not want to take things into your own hands.
Yeah. I was kind of go along with this. I was talking with a friend this week, and he asked me, he goes, why is the church against like the homosexuals so much? And I said, well, why isn't the church against adulterers, murderers, liars, thieves? I said, why aren't we against them just as much? Mm-hmm. I said, because it's all sin. It's going to send you to the same place.
Yeah.
I said, it's not. I said, I view it. It's not my job to condemn the world. It's already condemned. I said, it's my job to judge the ones that are in the church by their fruit.
Yeah.
That's my job. My job's easy. If I see a brother or sister, and I say this because, and I feel like we need to be better stewards of one another.
I agree, especially in the church.
Yes,
I think the church is weakened to the point that it has because we haven't been.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
I mean, we really need to watch out for one another, because I don't believe that Satan is hiding around every little bush or tree or sign, but breadcrumbs are always there.
Yeah,
and we need to be real with each other. We did this. Have this small Bible study group, and we were going to it for a while. And the first thing we would do when we would get there, we would go off with another person, and we were supposed to have an accountability with that person. We would talk to them what we've been struggling with for the week, and they would pray for us. That it did wonders.
Oh yeah.
It strengthened your relationship.
Yeah. The thing that everyone I want to know is we're not better than anybody.
No.
We're not holier than thou. We struggle with the same things that everybody else struggles with. I maybe struggle with it less because I have turned my life over to Christ and to following God. And when you do that, your natural gravitation and thinking goes that direction.
Yeah.
Are you still subject to sin and having a fall? Absolutely you are. And it's especially difficult in this society because it's so in your face.
Yeah.
I think especially for us guys, one of the things that the guys really struggle with is sexual sin.
Oh, yeah.
It's in your face all the time, constantly. The algorithms on Facebook and YouTube, take your pick.
Yeah.
By the way, parents, if you didn't know this, your kids can get access to porn on YouTube.
Yeah.
I mean, it's disturbing. That's where we've gone to. It's pretty sad. But I think that's a huge pain point for guys. And as Christians, we struggle with that stuff too, right? As men, we struggle with that stuff too. And we are here. Our primary goal is, one, take care of ourselves and our families and shepherd, especially for you and I as guys, is to lead our families and take care of them and shepherd them in the way they should go, right? And then, but beyond that, we're supposed to look out for one another. Yeah. And the ladies should be shepherding the ladies, and the guys should be shepherding the guys. And we should be keeping the body of Christ strong and kind of pruned.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the pruning part, is where I'm going with this, that we don't do. We are not supposed to have someone in our midst that claims to be a Christian and then does whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
We're supposed to go to them and we're supposed to say, hey, you're not supposed to be doing this. You're struggling. Let me help you. Let me pray with you, but you need to turn away from this. And when they don't, if they make they should do that. But if they make the choice to not do that and openly sin, it's very clear that what we're supposed to do, and it's kick them out of the church.
Yeah.
And I know that's a controversial thing to say, controversy number 45 for the day, but it's supposed to be the way it is, because we can't guide others to Christ if we have open hypocrisy in our midst.
Yeah.
We can't do that. And that's very clearly written in the New Testament.
Yeah.
Now, for those in the world that are not Christ followers, we're supposed to handle those folks with a little bit more kid gloves than that.
Yeah.
Because we're supposed to lead you to Christ. And it's just difficult. All of it's difficult. It's hard being a human being. It's hard being a sinful human being. And it's funny, some of our conversation that we had before we hit record today. I'm not going to get into it, but I will get into this. Speaking of the sexual sin, I woke up today with something on my heart that I just woke up. I couldn't get back to sleep for whatever reason. I had it on my brain, and God was like, I want you to do something with this. Now, I haven't followed through with that yet. I'm going to. But it was really talking about the sexual sin, because one of the things that I see in society that we do today is we make anything of that sort okay.
Yeah.
It's accepted, and it's not, because it's a gateway to leading you down the path that you're going to be lost for eternity, potentially.
Yeah.
It's pulling you away from your relationship with God and potentially your salvation if you're not already saved. And all of these conversations we've had, and I know the show's maybe a little bit heavier here as we get towards the end of it, but it's an important conversation to have, because you can see through the history of the Bible how our ancestors, all the stuff we've talked about, every single thing we've talked about today is in the Bible that you can read. All of these struggles and all of these sins. This is not new. Like Solomon said, there's nothing new under the sun.
No.
Right? It just goes and rises up the other side again.
David was an adulterer and murderer in the same time. And he was the apple of God's eye.
Yep. Paul, the hero of the New Testament. Christian murderer.
Yep.
Christian murderer. And I think I said this before, but I always get a kick now that I know what I know from the other, from the totality perspective. I would love to know where on the Damascus Road Paul was exactly when he got, blinded and told that I'm going to make something useful of you.
Yeah.
Because the Damascus Road runs right up next to Mount Hermon.
Yeah, it does.
So it's kind of fun. I think that's another one where God was, Christ technically, but
that's just a crazy. I love that story.
It's cool. And then, obviously you have quite arguably, Paul is, I don't want to get into the Hall of Fame, of like who would rank higher as Peyton Manning higher than Tom Brady. I know that they're both in the Hall of Fame, or, he's going to be soon, but, who's really better kind of a thing. But, I love Paul. And the funny thing is the world today hates Paul.
Yep.
Because Paul kind of spoke it the way it was.
Yeah.
Peter
or Paul.
Yeah. Which is not ironic that Satan made sure to make those guys go away first.
Yeah, it is. It's
like they were both martyred in
that's
whatever.
I know they were
60 some AD, I want to say.
They were old, but they weren't that old.
Yeah, because
they still had
they still had time. Like Christ was born obviously 0 or roughly what we would know today anyway. And then 30 whatever AD was crucified, and they were all roughly the same age, I would think.
The crazy thing about Paul, he was a contemporary with Jesus. A lot of people don't think about that.
Expound on what you mean by that.
They were alive at the same time. That means they probably sat closely to the same rabbis and discussed with the same.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I was thinking you were talking Peter for some reason, but you didn't. You said Paul.
Yeah, they were their paths probably cross more than once.
Yeah.
When you actually sit and think about it, it's kind of like, you're watching a movie. This is how I take it. You're watching a movie at the beginning, and they're like kids, and it's like a good guy and a bad guy, and they kind of cross, and then later on in life, their paths cross again, but they're on the same side.
It doesn't seem like it, but I'm hoping somehow the guy in The Chosen, that's the Roman that's been following around Christ, who's like the kind of the creepy clandestine Roman guy.
Yeah.
I'm hoping somehow he turns into Paul. Wouldn't that be cool?
I haven't even thought about that. I was thinking I haven't thought about that.
Dallas Jenkins, if you're not thinking this and you're listening to this podcast, let's talk. I have spinoffs. I have spinoffs ready to go. Tell me that wouldn't be a good series.
That would, yeah.
The Life of Paul.
Yeah.
I mean, not to downplay the life of Christ at all, but wow, that would be a good one.
Yeah, it would be.
Not just that, but like all of the post Christ story. I mean, there's a ton there.
Yeah, there is. There's, especially when you get into Paul's travels.
Mm-hmm. Like in Rome and Antioch and all this.
Why was he going there? There was already, he was going out to the dispersed because there was synagogues there.
Because he was Roman. I've seen him in.
He was roaming around.
He was actually Roman.
No, he was roaming around.
Oh yeah, okay, gotcha. Sorry, I'm normally a hip on my puns. How's it going? Good job, well played.
Yeah,
roaming around.
No, it would be. I haven't thought about that, but that's cool.
Oh, you mean if like The Chosen, if they would do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, because he was half Roman and half Jewish, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he had a dual ancestry.
Yep.
Because they locked him up. Where was he at? And they locked him up, and he's like, "Hey, just FYI, I'm half Roman."
Yeah, I'm a Roman
and they
citizen.
Like, freaked out.
Yeah, they were like,
they thought he was Jewish,
and they were like, "Uh-oh," and it was against the law to hit a Roman. That means death.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you know somebody, and I think he really used that as an advantage. God used him as an advantage to get to the Romans.
Totally, 100%.
They're the Elohim. They were the bad guys in charge. They were polytheistic. They had all of these gods, and the one true God went in and tore them up with one man.
Yep,
that was a citizen.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're thinking, what, how good am I? What, blah blah blah, whatever. If God can use Paul, He can use you.
Absolutely.
There's
so many of those stories.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in that. The Bible is not a done book.
No, it's just the story up to a point.
Yes,
the story continues on today.
If everybody from Christ's time till now put their story in with the Bible of what God did for them and how Christ worked through their lives, it would be the big. I mean, it would go on forever.
Yeah, and
I think we need to have that kind of attitude when we become a Christian. We are continuing the story.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Yeah, whatever you can be to be obedient, and ultimately, God knows your strengths, right? He even knows your strengths maybe when you don't. Because one of the things that obviously Satan is the master of, as we talked about earlier, is beating you down to the point where you don't even know. I don't think most Christians even know who they are. Like when we talk about that structure of where you outrank everything in creation except for God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
So like whenever Satan is picking on you, that's why Christ said, "Get behind me, Satan." Yeah. Put him in his place. You outrank him. He gave us the power of heaven and earth. Yes. And I don't think we use that power enough. This is kind of a crazy thing, but and I hope I don't want to ever be tested by this. So, Lord, don't test me here, please. He just raised his hand and looked to heaven. Please don't test me. But there's like a thing I think in a lot of guys where it's like, we want to know how we would do in war. Yeah. There's like a part of us where it's like, I want to know how I would do in combat as a leader. How I would do, and there's kind of that same thing for me, like in the spiritual, like how I would do in like spiritual warfare. Like if I was ever face to face with a demon, would I be able to kind of command the demon with that same authority, the true authority that's been given to us?
Yeah. We don't.
I would like to think so.
But
I also, at night when it's dark down here and I go upstairs, I try to get to the top of the stairs as quick as I can because I still don't like it.
Things we don't talk about in church. Part two, but part trace would be how the church does not equip people to deal with spiritual warfare.
No,
we
don't talk about it.
No,
we don't talk about it.
We don't understand the Elohim and what they are to do. They are to quote unquote kind of guide and the governments and everything, but we have the big OG on our side, and we can call on him.
Yeah, 100%.
Think about it. Joshua asked God to have the sun stand still so he could kill more people.
Yeah, I know, right? I read that story this week, oddly enough.
To kill more people.
Yeah.
Because he knew the sun was going down.
Yeah.
Are you willing to...
The only time in history.
Yes. Are you willing to ask God to make the sun stand still so you can slay demons?
How's that fit in the flat earth thing? I'm kidding, man. I'm kidding. We'll get there. We'll cross that bridge at some point. But yeah, you're right.
I mean,
how the power we have,
and we don't use it
when your heart's in the right place.
We don't use it.
No, we don't. We think power. I think for the most part, anytime when you talk about power, it's always thought of in all of the terms that would be humanistic or demonic.
Yeah, I have a story of my own. A couple years ago, I'll make it really short.
You can make it as long as you want. It's our show. I'll cut it into 50 parts if I have to.
My daughter adopted this cat. It was a neighbor's cat. Got hit by a car one morning before school. He's laying in the middle of the street. It was a all white cat. It had tire treads on it still.
Oh, no.
Blood was coming out of his nose and mouth. I picked the cat up and I just said a quick prayer, said, God, please heal this cat. That's all. And it was like a true heart of compassion.
You felt it, yeah.
I put it on the neighbor's porch. They had like a cat box up there where their cats hung out. Left a note. I get home from work. I go, check on it. And she said, yeah, I called the vet, and the vet said if the cat can walk into the house and drink, which it did, and ate, it should be fine. She said, because they were like closed or something, her vet. So she checked it over, went to the bathroom, no blood anywhere. And she said the cat was 19 years old.
Oh my goodness.
That's a total God thing.
Absolutely, 100%.
I had nothing to do 100%. With it.
You did.
I had a heart of true, and I can honestly say that was God. That wasn't me.
Well, it started with you.
Well,
it started with you. You were obedient in that situation. Well, that's not necessarily a situation of obedience. That's just a situation of, but I think that I think that situation is not possible without necessarily walking in obedience for a while and having the attunement to think that way.
Yeah.
However, though, there are plenty of situations where I think in desperation people do make those prayers, but because your heart is in such attunement at that particular moment with God, because you're setting aside all of your humanistic undercurrent things that you want.
Yeah.
Right? Because we do. We're kind of conniving as human beings. It's just our nature. I hate to say that, but it's just the truth. And you're in that moment, you're literally setting it aside and you become pure.
Yeah.
Because you just literally have compassion for this poor animal.
Yeah. And it was with authority.
Yeah. And you prayed with authority. And that's the kind of place that we're called to be into when we pray for people that are sick or whatever the situation is. It's hard to get there, especially from zero, like just ground floor right here. like if you told me that, you had some terminal disease, it's hard to, snap that finger and get into that mode. But in that particular moment, there are things that happen that reach us from an empathy perspective so hard that you are able to go there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing too. I think all of the things that we experience in the world, we become incredibly hardened to things. Like our heart just becomes hardened.
Yeah.
I mean, it's constant, right? There's like television and movies and music, and it's hard. It's a lot of hard messaging that we're constantly getting. The internet, sex, violence, drugs, rock and roll, all this stuff.
Yeah.
But it's just a dark message all the time. And I'm not saying, we should turn off all of our TVs and go live in a cave, because you can't do that either. But it is, and it's hard to funnel through that. So, you just have to practice that attunement. But one of the things that will help your attunement greatly is obedience.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I'm speaking from firsthand experience myself. Like I've said for a long time, I was a mediocre Christian. I wasn't a bad one, but I wasn't a useful one. And obedience is what's finally made me useful.
Yeah.
I would have never done this podcast 5 years ago, probably. I probably would have never done it.
Yeah.
Or I would have just focused on the other stuff. The alien, we can talk aliens or we can talk giants, but then never incorporating anything biblical into it to keep it safe.
I will say God's been after me for quite some time. He's given me very restless nights sometimes about not doing what he wants me to do.
Yeah.
This has been a very good outlet for me.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
I remember I woke up, I had a dream. He's like, "Are you going to finish what you're supposed to be doing right now?" And it was like a very boss principal style, So I'm like,
arms crossed, shameful.
Yes.
Shamefully.
Yes. He looked
down his nose.
He looked like the businessman type principal. And I'm like, I knew exactly.
Clip on tie, short sleeve shirt.
No, it was in a suit.
Oh, okay.
Nice suit. But yeah, I mean, we have to be obedient.
We do. Yeah. And I'm telling you right now, and I know the devil's message and the world's message will tell you that that's boring and no fun.
Yeah.
Do what you want to do. It's more fun. And I'm going to tell you right now, I promise you 150%, you will have way more fun being obedient. You will.
Yeah.
You will find so much. It fills that hole.
Yes, it does.
It's the perfect size cork for the hole.
Yes, it is.
Because that other stuff, it's all it's like a flim flam sales pitch that's never going to fulfill.
No.
It will for a while. It's like, you can go buy a Lamborghini. Lamborghini be fun for a while, but after a while, it's just going to be another car.
Yeah.
You never see a celebrity that's got the same Lamborghini for 10 years. They don't do that. They go and get something else because they're trying to fill that hole.
Yeah. Although it'd be fun to drive.
I'm down with a Lamborghini. I ain't going to not drive one.
I don't know if I could fit.
I'm looking at myself and I see some geometry problems. I'm in shape. I'm in a pear shape.
I'm just really tall. I don't know if I could fit.
I'm just really tall. I'm swollen. There's more of me to love, Ben.
That's right.
My wife loves me.
My wife loves me.
There you go.
That's all that matters.
That's all that matters. Yeah. So, ultimately too, and I think we would be remiss. This is something else that we didn't talk about doing today that I wanted to stop and just tell everybody thank you. Because, we've only released 2 of these. This will be number 3. And so far, the response we've had has been overwhelmingly positive.
Yes.
And it's been so awesome to get the feedback. We're always open to critical feedback too. Hey, we want to make it as good as we can for the Lord, right? But it's been a blessing for you and I know, and we're looking forward to doing more of it. And but for all of the people out there listening, thank you guys very much for your support. We hope you continue to enjoy and spread the word and share with others.
I'm very low key, but for me to get excited and to see God working, this is not. This might be our show or whatever it is.
Yeah.
We totally do it for God.
Yeah, it's
because
God's show.
we just like to talk about God stuff.
Yep, we're just the two lucky schlubs that he decided to sit in the chairs to talk about his stuff.
I know, yeah, and how God works is amazing.
Oh yeah,
because it's not a chance. It was just, hey, you want to do this? Yeah, sure. And God's fingerprint was on it the whole time.
oh yeah, yep. Continues to be so. Yeah, it's been awesome.
I hope we addressed the Elohim a little bit.
We did. We talked about the Elohim a lot.
Yeah.
They know who they are now.
Yeah, it was...
and who you are in creation.
Yes, that's...
Don't forget who you are, kids.
Yes, we are the sliced bread.
Yeah, we are.
Without...
Good, well put.
We are. So
You're the sunbeam giant loaf.
That's right.
Soft and squishy.
With peanut butter and jelly.
Bam.
Oh, man. That sounds delicious in a big, tall glass of milk.
There you go. I'll make you some when we go upstairs. Guess what?
Is it that time already?
1:30 on the dot.
Wow.
Look at us.
You'd think we did this a while.
Man, it's like we're hustlers.
I know.
Like podcast hustlers.
That's right.
All right. Well, we'll see what we can get into next week. We'll see where God steers the ship, but it's been fun with y'all.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the support, and share the word and spread the word. Hopefully you guys enjoy this one too.
Yeah.
We will catch you next time on The Foil. Take care.
God bless.
Bye.